Good morning, Shift. It has been a crazy week, and while we're thankful to have been spared by Hurricane Ian, many unfortunately weren't. We're going to be collecting supplies to take to Fort Myers over the next few weeks, and you can drop them off here at the building. Some of the supplies needed are water, baby wipes, batteries, tarps, and blankets. For the full list, you can go to our Facebook page. Don't forget, your generosity jars are due on October 23rd. Every cent will be used to buy holiday meals for those who need it and to pay off as many GRU bills as we can. You can also scan this QR code and click the generosity jars link to donate online. It flew right into my eye. We have a YMCA Serve Day on October 30th. We won't be meeting here at the building. Instead, we're going to be meeting at the YMCA to help them organize. We will be planning this Serve Day, so when it begins, we can get stuff done. Lastly, with everything that's happened this past week, we decided our newcomers class second shift will be happening next week, October 9th. You can scan our code, click the link, check the date that you're attending, and it's that easy. We will be meeting in the auditorium right after service. And that's all I have for you today, so let's start our new series, Virtue Signals.
Did you know that if you search up the hashtag Karens of TikTok, that there are the last time I checked, there were 3.1 billion views. Billion views, all right? For some reason, our culture is obsessed with being offended, whether it's watching people get offended, which, let's be honest, that's pretty fun, right? Being offended or watching talking heads tell us what we should be offended about. We just really can't get enough of it, and we can't really get away from it. And let's be really honest here. If you know me at all, you know that I have a tendency to poke the bear, right? And some say that I enjoy it, and some might be correct. Some. I have been known to offend certain people, but in my defense, I can't help it. Okay? I can't help it. This superpower has been handed down to me by my father, and it was handed down to him by his father, and so on and so forth. Okay? We have harnessed the power of the butthead. Okay? Into what I really think is an art form, if I do say so myself. And I learned it early on. I couldn't help it. For instance, when Tori and I first got married, it was the year 2000, picture if you will. It was the year 2000. The job market wasn't great where we were. We lived in Columbia, Missouri. We had a friend that owned the Orange Julius in the Columbia Mall. And so he said, hey, I need somebody to manage the place. Would you do that? And I said, okay. So I was the manager of the Orange Julius Dairy Queen at the Columbia Mall. Now, little side note, this one's for free. This is for anybody younger. There is no job beneath you. If you can do a job and you can get a living wage and it's not a toxic situation, you do it. All right. I also learned that from my parents too. That's for free. But so I was the manager of the Orange Julius Dairy Queen at the Columbia Mall. We served Orange Julius drinks and Dairy Queen treats, all right? And I opened the store. So it was usually pretty slow in the mornings until like the noon rush when people would, and this was when people like went to the mall, okay? I understand some of you are like, there's malls? Yes, it was a big mall. And there was a lot of people that for some reason would show up at the Columbia Food Court Mall and eat lunch during the day, on the week, on a Tuesday. I don't know. It was crazy back then. But a young man showed up, looked at the menu, and, I went through the spiel. Welcome to Orange Julius Dairy Queen. How can I help you? And he looks and he's like, I'd like a Dairy Queen hamburger. And I said, well, sir, I'm sorry. We only serve the Orange Julius drinks and the Dairy Queen treats. So it's just the ice cream. I can make you an Orange Julius hot dog if you'd like. And he said, but I want a Dairy Queen hamburger. And I didn't know if he was joking or not, because we just kind of stood there and looked at each other awkwardly for a second. And then I just kind of slowly pointed to the menu that he was looking at and said, sir, you can see that they're not on the menu. We don't actually serve those. We just have the ice cream and the drinks. And he took a deep breath and in a very serious and stern tone of voice, looked at me and said, and you call yourself Dairy Queen? Now, if this had been like a sitcom, right? This is where you break the fourth wall and you say something snarky to the audience or whatever, but obviously that didn't happen in this situation. So I didn't have a fourth wall to break. So instead I said it to him. So then I in an equally serious and stern tone of voice, I looked at him and said, no, I call myself Joe. He blew a gasket. All right. I thought it was hilarious. I thought it was a great comeback. Like he would laugh and I would laugh and we'd be best friends and skip off into the sunset. But he blew a gasket and I don't remember what he said, but it wasn't nice. And that was really the first time that I understood something. And I've got it up here on the screen for you. And it's this. If you're always looking to be offended, you'll always find what you're looking for. If you're always looking to be offended, you'll always find what you're looking for, right? So I want to welcome everybody to Shift, whether you're here in person or online. We're starting a 4-week series that we're going to call Virtue Signals. We're doing it with First Christian and Maison here in town. And one of the things that we're looking at are virtue signals. If you've ever heard that term, virtue signaling is especially on social media where you kind of post things where you want other people to think certain things about you, but that's the end of your involvement in that thing. You post and then you're done. Look at me. I'm so good. Post. I did my job, right? And it's just kind of like this empty, like kind of signal that I'm like, hey, look at me. This is the kind of person that I am. And so we're going to be looking at several different things over the next couple of weeks. We're going to be looking at integrity. We're going to be looking at quitting. We're going to be looking at gratitude. And today we're going to be looking at the idea of honor and specifically honoring each other in a time where it's really easy to dehumanize each other, right? So in our culture today. So let's just start with a couple definitions, all right? To honor someone means to value, respect, highly esteem. It means to treat as precious, weighty, or valuable. And to dishonor somebody basically means the exact opposite. It's like to treat as common or ordinary, to treat as unworthy, to treat as unvaluable, right? And if you honor somebody, then you're going to esteem them, right? You're going to cherish who they are. You're going to value them. You're going to build them up. And you're also going to believe the best about that person, right? But if you dishonor somebody, you're going to treat them as common. You're going to tear them down. You devalue who they are. And then you're going to assume the worst about them, right? Now, why should we care about this? There are a ton of different directions that we could go, but I want to talk about 2 reasons why we should care about them today. First and foremost, I think that if we're trying to follow the way of Jesus, then honoring others is just part of who we are. Like you can look at the very beginning of this thing that we call the Bible, and it says there in Genesis 1, verse 26, go ahead and show that on the screen, dude. It says, then God said, let us make humanity in our image, in our likeness. So when God says, let us make humanity in our likeness and our image, it means that we are God's representatives here on earth. Have you ever seen anybody like make a little statue of a god or goddess, whether it's like Hindu or Vishnu or something along those lines where they carve something out? That's us. Like we are God's representatives here on the planet. And what it means is that each and every one of us carry within us the image of God, all right, or the Imago Dei. So when we honor each other, we're really honoring that image. We're honoring that Imago Dei within each other, right? So hear me when I say this. Every single person that you will ever meet, all right, carries within them the same Imago Dei that you do, all right? Which means that we're called to honor them, to treat them with honor because they're human, right? Now, before we move on, I want to make this clear that when we're talking about this, what I'm not saying, I don't mean that to honor others means that you should put yourself into abusive or toxic situations, all right? Because there are plenty of people that don't treat the Imago Dei within themselves with honor, right? So we're not called to go into those places, but we are called to treat others with the intrinsic value that is in all humanity, all right? Now, I have certain people in my life that I really struggle with this. There's a certain person that shall remain nameless for this, that I absolutely struggle when it comes to this. They have a radically different worldview than I do. Like, their worldview and my worldview are completely opposed to each other, particularly when we begin to disagree. All right, when we begin to disagree, it gets even worse. I don't have and if you know me, I don't have an issue with people disagreeing with me. Like, you can disagree with me all day long, and we can still be friends. That doesn't bother me at all, right? It's where my problem is when this person believes that they have an objective view of life, and then everybody else has a subjective view, as if their opinion is more fact than opinion, and then if I see things differently, then I'm wrong, just based on my experience, right? And particularly when it comes to the idea of faith, that if I see things differently, that if for some reason that I view God and Christianity and faith or Jesus, if I view it differently than they do, then all of a sudden I have abandoned Jesus, and I'm now in I'm getting ready to go to hell, and I've abandoned the historic Orthodox faith. So here's how I honor them. I honor the Imago Dei and that person by not dehumanizing them, right? I honor the divinity within them by not dehumanizing them. And I think, and I don't say this flippantly, I think that they have some deep-seated issues, and that they need to seek some professional help for that they need therapy. And we've had that discussion. But I refuse to dehumanize them. And as much as I do not like this person, and I do not like this person, I refuse to treat them as less than. And that's how I honor that person. I have another person in my life, all right, that also has a radically different view of the world. Much of it is generational. And but here's the thing, we both want what is best for people, okay? I completely disagree with how they would bring about what they describe as what would be best for people. But we have a friendship that goes back years, all right? We have a friendship that goes back years, and you know how I honor them? I honor them by us not talking about those things. And now some may say, well, you're just kind of skirting the issue. But I would say we've had those discussions multiple times for many years, all right? And most of them, overwhelming them, were all calm and cool and collected. A few of them got a little heated, but we just stopped talking about it because nothing changed, right? To continue to talk to this person about these things would be like me coming over here and just banging my head against the wall and then wondering why I have a headache. It doesn't do any good, right? So I honor them by not talking about these things. I refuse to allow those differences of opinions to get in the way of a friendship and a love that we've built over the years. So it's not always easy, but it is worth it, right? So that's how I honor that person. So this idea of honoring each other, whether we agree or disagree, we all, that's the base. We all carry that spark of the divine within us, and that we have to honor the Imago Dei in one another, all right? Now, going on from there, there are literally a million different directions that you could go with this, okay? But I want to highlight just one thing, and then we're going to wrap it up. I want to highlight one thing when it comes to the idea of honoring each other. A little over a week ago, our local Pride Center suffered a hate crime. I've got some pictures. Can you go ahead and click over to that? So this is what they did. Go ahead and go to the next one, bud. That's the front door, and one more, and you can leave it there. They left behind a hate note. indicating why they did, and they launched, and I mean launched, large stones into the center itself. They caused property damage in the center, and the reason they did this is because over the last year or so, over this past year, there have been a lot of families reach out to the Pride Center asking for help because their kids felt isolated, they were feeling attacked, they needed a safe space to just come and be kids. And so there was a group that were tasked with putting this thing together, and it started to get advertised, and then this happened. And literally, the whole group, all the group is we had music, and we had snacks, and we had games, and we had a hangout time. Think youth group, just no message. That's all it was. It was literally just a place for kids to show up and be kids. And that's all that hate got directed towards that. Now, go ahead and leave that up. In the Old Testament book of Exodus, all right, in chapter 20, we see something called the Ten Commandments, all right? In verse 7, it says this. We'll go ahead and go to that. You can't leave it up. My bad. In verse 7, it says this: you must not misuse the name of the Lord your God. And that word misused is often translated, and you've probably heard it, as in vain. Do not use the name of the Lord your God in vain, all right? Now, in the Hebrew, that word is shov. It's like, if you want to pronounce it, it's S-H-A-W-V, shov, okay? And it means to empty. It means to empty the name of God. It means to make his name worthless and to mean nothing. That's how you misuse the name of God. Now, as I was growing up, all right, I was very much taught that to misuse or to take the Lord's name in vain was to say something like, oh my God, right? I can remember getting in trouble for saying that from my pastor. We were on a trip to Six Flags. We stopped at McDonald's to eat, and I had a Big Mac. I was eating it, and the stuff fell and landed on my lap, and I was like, oh, gosh. I said, gosh. And he was like, oh my, I can't believe your language, Smith. You know, like, kids today. You know, it was just like that. It's like, and I'm like, what? What did I say? What did I do? And he's like, you said gosh. And I was like, okay. And he's like, it's too close. You're still taking God's name in vain. And I was like, am I though? Am I really? By the way, I didn't. I wasn't at all. To misuse or to use the name in vain is so much more and so deeper than just flippantly saying some phrase, right? Misusing the name of God has much more to do with systems and structures that marginalize and denigrate and abuse and oppress people. So last Saturday, can you go back to that real fast? I know I'm making you jump all over the place. It's my fault, buddy. Go back to the picture. Last Saturday, when we were doing the cleanup, I took a 16-second video and posted it on TikTok. Because I thought, I'll hashtag Gainesville. We can try to get some Gainesville people to see what's going on. And then I left it. And then I started getting all these crazy notifications like a few hours later. The video went viral. It just went viral. And people started seeing it and sharing it and, you know, stitching it and all the things that you do on TikTok. And we actually posted the give link, and money was starting to get raised like crazy. But one of the Enneagram 3, if you know the Enneagram, the 3 is the achiever, which means I want to beat you at anything that we're doing together. All right. So like if we ever play a sport, I'm super competitive. I'm also a 2. I'm a 3 with a 2 wing, which is a helper. So I want you to like me. I want to remain friends, but I'm going to beat you in whatever it is that we're going to do. Okay. So I want to dominate you in the sport or the video game, but then afterwards, let's be buds. All right. If you beat me, that 2 is really strained and I have a difficult time. I work on it. I'm better than I used to be. So I'm better. But my Enneagram 3 was quite pleased when I started seeing that money, hearing that money was rolling in, because it was like, oh, gotcha. But there was a ton of comments. Like I think it's upwards of like 3,000 or 4,000 comments now. And there's these commonalities in all the comments. one that really stuck out, that really got me, was about quote unquote Christians doing this, being the ones that perpetrated the hate crime. And there was one particular comment that was said multiple times about how whoever did that was probably sitting in a church pew that next Sunday. And that was a gut punch. That was a gut punch, not only because the church has earned that, but because we taught that. We have misused the name of God. We have taken the name of God in vain in our teachings and in our theology. For generations in the United States, we have used a single verse in Leviticus to say that a certain people are an abomination. Now, the English definition for the word abomination is, it means to cause, a thing that causes hatred or disgust. All right, so not only did we teach that these people were an abomination, but then we said that they were the cause of the hate and disgust. So people like me would stand on stages like this and teach people like you that a certain people are to be hated and God hates them. And if we do that, then we're tearing them down, we're devaluing them, and we're assuming the worst about them. The smashed glass of the center is a direct result of that teaching that only started in 1946, by the way. To hate anyone, to teach people to hate anyone, is to hate Jesus himself. And you might say, well, Joe, that's a little far-fetched. Okay, let's just see what Jesus had to say about it. In Matthew's account of Jesus' life, in chapter 25, we see Jesus tell this parable that speaks to the peculiar nature of kingdom ethics. All right? And he tells this story about how two groups of people saw him in these different situations, and that they either gave him food and clothing and water when he needed it, that they visited him in the hospital or in prison when he was there, or they didn't do those things. And of course, in the story, the people are like, Jesus, when did we ever see you in those places? He had two responses. The first one was to the group of people that helped him in those situations, and it's verse 40, and we have that. You can go ahead and skip forward to that, buddy. I know, I made you keep going. There you go. And he says, I tell you the truth, when you did it, whatever it was, to one of the least of these, my brothers and sisters, you were doing it to me. Then, to the people that he didn't help, go ahead and go to the next one. He says this, I tell you, in verse 45, I tell you the truth, when you refused to help the least of me, these, my brothers and sisters, you were refusing to help me. Wherever you find the marginalized in any given culture, you better get your butt over there, because that's where you're going to find Jesus. Now, what does that have to do with honoring each other? When we honor God by honoring each other. We dishonor God when we dishonor each other. Okay, we don't honor God and others with church services and youth groups and all of the churchy things that our modern evangelical expression of church has taught us, all right? We honor God with our treatment of people. Yeah, this brings worship to God, absolutely. I don't want to downplay the corporate setting. But when we teach and treat people with hatred, we misuse and we dishonor God's name. When we empty people of their value, we do the same thing to God. So understand this, honoring each other has less to do with polite speech, has less to do with just agreeing to disagree. Honoring each other is a fundamental way that we live life. It is a fundamental way that we treat each other, knowing that we all humanity carries that spark of the divine, and that our treatment of others is our day-to-day living out of our theology or our belief system. Following the way of Jesus, a large part, I would say almost the vast majority of following the way of Jesus is how we treat people. You cannot say you honor God's name when you dishonor others. You can't. You can't. All the ills of our current culture could be solved if we just had the courage to treat others the way that we want to be treated. Think about it. If we honored the Imago Dei in each other, like honestly, if our culture, and we love to say that we're a Christian nation, that's another sermon for another day. If we just did the one sentence that he said, all the law and all the prophets, hang on, treat each other as we want to be treated. If we really did that, then we could address and really address systematic racism. We could address xenophobia, right? We could address patriarchy. We could address homophobia and transphobia. We could honestly address those things if we took that, if we had the courage to do that. If we had the courage to do that, we wouldn't abuse each other, right? We wouldn't use immigrants and women as political stunts. Those things would be abhorrent to us. There is no us versus them. There is no us and them. There is only us. That's it. All of humanity made in the image of an eternally loving creator. End of sentence. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a moment to reflect on that. For those here and those watching on the stream, if you find yourselves on the margin in our culture, then you need to know that you also have a creator that stands with you on the margins. And for those of us, me, that has the seat of all seats, who aren't on the margins, then my job is to honor God by honoring them. So I believe that today, I think the wisdom that we pull from this, for me, as I'm thinking through this, is that we have to reflect on this idea of what it actually means to honor people, right? That a creator valued people so much that he was willing to clothe himself in flesh and spend his life fighting this disease that we call sin that is within humanity, this brokenness. That he spent his entire life on this planet pressing all of his divinity into all of his humanity. That he would subject himself to the cruelty of humans so that through that cruelty he would be the sacrifice to end all sacrifices and bring healing to all of humanity. Jesus, think about this, Jesus shared in our fallen nature. Jesus shared in our fallen humanity so that we could share in his healed nature, his healed humanity. Right? And these little small emblems where we participate in communion every week, they're a representation of that healing. But it can't stop there. Like it can't just be a reflection and then like we feel good about ourselves and then we leave this place. Right? It can't stop there because then that means that this thing of following the way of Jesus is just about me. And it can't be. Right? It empowers us to then leave spaces like this and to go into other places that wherever we go and to bring that healing by honoring other people. We're empowered to honor God by honoring others. And it is the healing of Jesus that allows us to do that. And so this morning, I'm going to pray for us. And the lights are going to go back down, and Andy is going to come back up and just kind of play quietly so that way everybody has a few moments to just really think about that. What it means to actually honor people. What it means to actually misuse the name of God. How am I doing that or not doing that in different areas of my life, right? I think that's the thing that we need to think through. It is for me. And how do I honestly imagine, or how do I honestly honor the Imago Dei in others, particularly those that live a life that's opposed to the way of Jesus? Like, how do we do that? Because I don't have solid answers for those questions. Like, because you're going to have to answer that in your own life. The wisdom of Jesus, I think that's why it's so deep, is that it's going to be different for each of us. Right? And how we live that out. And so I'm going to pray, and we're going to take just a few moments. And if you would, go ahead and turn down the lights back there. And then Andy's going to come up and play. And then if you're willing to participate, if you're wanting to participate, during that time, you'll go ahead and take the communion on your own. And then Andy and Meg will sing us out of here. And then hopefully go watch the Gators win this week. That's not next. Let's pray. Creator, we thank you for beautiful weather. We thank you for a chance to gather, whether in person or online. We thank you for things like technology where we can do that from all over the place. Lord, I pray that that you would lead us, that you would guide us, that you'd speak to us, and show us how, as a people, we're called to treat others. Lord, there is so much division and ugliness and strife and just straight up hatred in our culture right now. And it feels like every time you turn on the TV that somebody's trying to push a different narrative for more clicks or more views or more whatever. And so, God, I pray that we would be a people of a third way, that we would follow your way, Lord, your narrow path that is so hard to find because it means that we have to treat people a certain way. Empower us to do that even when we don't know how. God, help us to always err on the side of love. When in doubt, God, help us to love. Sometimes that means that we have to love from afar, and help us to know when to draw those boundaries. We're so thankful, Jesus, that you walked this earth, that you struggled with these very things, that you got angry and you got mad, you got frustrated with people. You straight up left people where they were and you went off on your own so that you could recharge. We're thankful that you lived in our humanity. And so, God, help us to share in the healing of that. And so, Lord, I pray that as we get ready to leave this space, Lord, we do so ready, lifted up, empowered, to live a different way. And Jesus, we're thankful for that. In Jesus' name we pray.